Hello, guys. Welcome to YouTube Sunday School at Centenary United Methodist Church. So good to see you all again. We are continuing in our series talking about the Old Testament. Last week, we talked about Samson. He was a judge that God had placed in a position to help the Israelites. He actually is the one that defeated the Philistines at that particular time in history. Israel's life, the people of Israel's lives at that time were kind of upside down. They had moved into the promised land, but they had not gotten rid of all of the people who believed and worshiped idols. And consequently, a lot of them married people who didn't worship the one true God. They also partook in some of the idol worship activities. So God was not particularly happy with them, and it was just not a really positive, uplifting time in Israel's history. But there's a story today about a woman who her name was Ruth, and she is one of only two women in the Bible who have books of the Bible named after them. The other one is Esther, and we'll talk about Esther later. But Ruth was just an ordinary person. She wasn't a queen. She didn't have any special anything going on in her life. Isn't it funny how God uses the ordinary people to teach us strong lessons? But Ruth had married someone who was a Moabite, Ruth was a Moabite. She had married someone who was believed in the one true God. And her mother-in-law did too. And they had moved to a land where the Moabites were. And Ruth married into this family. She learned about the one true God from them. And the story shows her ways that she took what she learned about God and put it into action. It's a really, really, really wonderful story, and one that we can learn a lot of lessons from. So let's watch our story today about Ruth and Naomi.
Ruth and Naomi were widows. That means their husbands had died. Young Ruth had been married to Naomi's son. One day, Naomi decided to go back home to Israel where she was born. Ruth wanted to go with her. Naomi feared that Ruth would miss her family and friends, so she told Ruth not to come. But Ruth said,
"Please, don't ask me to leave you. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God."
And so they went together. But Ruth and Naomi were very poor. They didn't have enough to eat. Naomi was too old to work, so Ruth went out to a rich man's field to gather leftover grain for food. One day, the rich man named Boaz saw Ruth. She was a beautiful young woman.
Stay here. Work in my field.
Naomi decided Boaz would be a good husband for Ruth. So she came up with a plan to find out if Boaz wanted to marry Ruth. That night, Ruth went to the field where Boaz had been working hard all day. He was sleeping beside a pile of grain, and Ruth quietly laid down at his feet. About midnight, Boaz woke up suddenly and rolled over. He was startled. There was a woman lying near his feet.
Ruth, is that you?
"Yes, I am Ruth, your servant. Please spread your cover over me if you want to take care of me."
Boaz was pleased.
The Lord bless you, Ruth. Your kindness to me is great. Everyone knows you are a very good woman.
Boaz loved Ruth and asked to marry her. After they were married, Ruth had a little boy, which made all of them very happy. As a young boy, Samuel
Sorry, a little technical difficulties there. It went a little further than I wanted it to. But Ruth was an extraordinary woman in the fact that she gave up her family, she gave up her country, and she came back with Naomi to take care of Naomi, basically, and to help her. And they didn't have anything. And Ruth went into the fields to pick up the leftover crops. And that has a name to it, and that name is gleaning. Today, we see gleaning going on sometimes, especially when people have are picking sweet potatoes. If you'll notice out in the fields, they don't get all of the sweet potatoes up. So people are able to go back into the fields afterwards, after the people who own the fields have pulled all that they're going to take in their sale, and then they can glean and pull up the leftovers. Long ago, probably 30 years ago, we did this as a church. We gleaned fields in outside of Benson and gathered the sweet potatoes and then brought them back and sent them home with people from the food closet. So it's a tradition that started back then, and it's something that we can still do today, and it's called gleaning. So Ruth was in that field gleaning, and the field that she went to, that the video doesn't give you all of the facts on it, was Boaz's field, and Boaz was actually related to Naomi's family. So he was what you call a kinsman redeemer. In other words, he was related to Naomi's family, so he could marry Ruth. And Naomi knew that, and that's what her plan began to work toward. So it wasn't like Naomi just picked him out of the blue, but there was a purpose behind it, because they had very strong traditions about who could marry a widow, because Naomi's son was who Ruth had been married to, and he had died. So that's the way that she ended up with Boaz. And the best part of the story, and the reason that Ruth has her own book in the Bible, and that Ruth is listed in Jesus's genealogy in the book of Matthew, is that her son that she gave birth to, Obed, he was the great-grandfather of King David, and Jesus, his father, Joseph, was from the line of David, and God had promised that Jesus would come from that line. So that's where why Ruth is listed in Jesus's genealogy, and that's why Ruth is such an important person in the Bible. So that's her historical importance, but her other importance is because she was so kind. She took care of a woman that she should have just let go back to, if in ordinary circumstances, just let go back home to her family in Israel. But she felt so called to take care of Naomi and to be part of Naomi's family. And for, as she said, for her God to be, for Naomi's God to be Ruth's God, that Ruth decided to leave her family, to leave her country, and to go back with Naomi to care for her. So Ruth shows just an incredibly caring person to take care of Naomi. So the question becomes for us, who do we see out there that we can care for? Is it a grandparent? Is it an elderly neighbor? Is it someone that you can go rake leaves for that can't get out and do it? Is it someone that you just need to smile and wave to, just to give them the feeling that somebody out there is thinking about them, somebody cares about them? Naomi was someone that had no one left except distant relatives. Ruth showed her that she cared. Again, what can you do? Just think about it, small ways that you can show people that you care. It's the beginning of Thanksgiving season, that we need to be grateful and show gratitude for what God has given us. I know it's a difficult time now. It really, really, really is. But we have so many blessings that we need to be grateful for. Can we share them with someone else? Who can we share them with? So let's take the lesson of Ruth and her example to us, and let's put it into action in ways that are simple and small, but you can imagine how important they'll be to other people. Y'all have a great week. Blessings to you all.